All right, so I get a lot of questions about this intake across social media, so I wanted to take this chance to talk about it a little bit. So this is a horde power intake, and it's one of the few modifications that you can do to the Yamaha CP2 platform to actually make a significant increase in power. Outside of that, you're pretty limited with the factory airbox. Stock Yamaha R7s pretty consistently make about 65 horsepower to the tire, less if you're in the UK and you have Euro 5 emissions. But here in the US, they pretty consistently make about 65 horsepower. With a full exhaust, the snorkel removed from the airbox, and an ECU flash, they make around 71 horsepower to the tire, which is a nice bump. But to go beyond that, you have to change the airbox because past removing the snorkel, the airbox is actually the restriction. So this is the factory airbox, and this is the snorkel that a lot of people talk about. And so this is really the only thing that you can do that is free to increase the flow. But outside of that, the restriction is actually the design of the airbox itself and the runners. So you don't really get any benefit by doing drop-in filters. On a lot of bikes, a drop-in filter does make a difference, but in this case, it just doesn't. You do have some other options out there for aftermarket intakes. TST makes one, Yoshimura, but part of why I went with this one is this is a traditional style K&N filter element, so it's very durable, you can clean it. The other ones use a foam filter element, which does flow really well, but those are going to be more work to maintain compared to this. They're also much more expensive, and there's really very small difference between those three options as far as the power they make. The horde power intake pretty consistently makes, with full exhaust and an ECU flash, about 75 horsepower to the tire. Now, that may not sound like a big jump when you're talking about peak numbers, but on a dyno graph, it's not the only thing that matters, especially on a bike where the factory airbox is very restrictive past about 8,500 RPM, whereas with an intake like this, it actually is able to carry that power out all the way to redline. And in scenarios like being on the track where you're spending a lot of time in that RPM range, that 10-15 horsepower on a bike that doesn't weigh much and already isn't making a ton of horsepower is a very significant difference. So hopefully that explains why I have an intake setup that looks like this. And if you have an R7 or anything with a CP2, I definitely suggest doing it because it is a very noticeable difference. And I actually have a video on YouTube where I kind of talk about it in more detail and do a first ride and things like that.